In less than 10 seconds, a bridge that had stood for decades was simply gone, swept away by a wall of brown water moving faster than anyone had ever seen. That is how quickly disaster unfolded in Shimen County, China, during the early hours of May 18, 2026. What began as a night of heavy rain turned into one of the most destructive flash flood events this mountainous region has ever recorded. Entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath rising water, roads collapsed, schools were submerged, and thousands of people were forced to flee for their lives in the dark. Located in the rugged Wuling Mountain region of northwestern Hunan Province, Shimen County is known for its steep valleys, narrow rivers, and tightly connected rural communities. But those same landscapes that make the region beautiful also make it dangerously vulnerable during extreme weather. And this storm was extreme. Meteorologists say the county received between 39 and 363 millimeters of rain within just 24 hours. At one monitoring station, nearly 58 millimeters fell in a single hour alone. Local officials describe the rainfall as unprecedented, beyond anything previously recorded in the area. The hardest hit communities were Hupingshan Town and Suoji Township, where rivers surged out of their banks with astonishing speed. Residents living near the Shishui River say the water rose so fast that many barely had time to react. Flood monitoring stations recorded levels far above previous historical records. At one location, the river climbed more than 12 meters within hours, triggering the highest possible flood warning. By around 2 in the morning, floodwaters were already tearing through streets and homes. Cars were swept away, livestock disappeared into the current, businesses filled with muddy water. And in Suoji Township, a suspension bridge that had connected residents for years collapsed into the river in roughly 10 seconds. Video footage captured the terrifying moment as the raging current ripped the structure apart piece by piece before carrying it downstream. But amid the destruction, stories of survival and humanity began to emerge. In Nisha community, a 70-year-old deaf grandmother became trapped inside her home as floodwater rapidly consumed the first floor. Living alone, she could not hear emergency warnings or calls from neighbors outside. But nearby residents noticed lights still visible from her upper floor. A local community leader named Wu Changzhe, along with several volunteers, launched a small rescue boat into the floodwaters during the middle of the night. Fighting strong currents and debris-filled water, they managed to reach the woman and bring her safely to shore. A nearby hotel owner then opened his doors to displaced residents free of charge, sheltering the elderly woman along with more than 10 others who had nowhere else to go. Moments like these often become the hidden stories inside major disasters, reminders that even during chaos, people instinctively move toward helping one another. Another remarkable escape happened at Suoji Central School. By the time floodwaters swallowed classrooms, hallways, and school grounds, every student and teacher had already been evacuated safely thanks to early warnings from local authorities. The school itself suffered devastating damage, but no lives were lost there. As conditions worsened overnight, emergency response teams mobilized across Hunan Province. Shimen County activated a Level 2 flood emergency response, one of the highest alert levels available. Rescue crews, firefighters, and emergency personnel rushed into affected areas while additional support teams arrived from the provincial capital of Changsha. Authorities say more than 18,000 residents were evacuated to shelters where food, water, and medical assistance were provided. Elderly residents and vulnerable families were prioritized during rescue operations. By the afternoon of May 18th, water levels in some of the worst-hit communities finally began to slowly recede. But the destruction left behind was immense. Roads remained buried beneath mud and debris. Bridges were either damaged or completely destroyed. Power and communication systems failed across multiple areas, and officials warned that the full extent of infrastructure and agricultural damage could take days, or even weeks, to fully assess. As of the latest reports, authorities confirmed at least one death while 2 others remain missing. Search and recovery operations are continuing. Scientists studying the events say this was what's known as a compound flash flood, an extremely dangerous combination of intense rainfall, steep terrain, fast-moving rivers, and narrow valleys that amplify flooding speed and force. In mountain regions like Shimen County, water has very little space to spread out. Instead, it rushes downhill rapidly, turning rivers into violent torrents within minutes. And experts warn that events like this may be becoming more common. Across China and many other parts of the world, meteorologists have observed an increase in extreme rainfall events that push beyond historical records. Infrastructure built for older weather patterns is increasingly being tested by storms that are stronger, wetter, and more unpredictable than before. For the people of Shimen County, however, this is no longer just a scientific discussion. It is personal. It is the memory of a bridge collapsing into darkness, the image of entire streets underwater before sunrise, the fear of waiting on rooftops for rescue, and the relief of seeing neighbors arrive when everything else seemed lost. The floodwaters will eventually disappear. Roads will reopen, bridges will be rebuilt, but the night of May 17th and 18th will remain etched into the lives of everyone who survived it. Our thoughts remain with the families affected and with the rescue teams continuing their work across Hunan Province. And if you'd like to stay updated on major disaster events and recovery efforts around the world, consider subscribing for more in-depth coverage.